What year were you born?
1938,
What city did you live in as a child?
Jacksonville, Texas.
Was the school you went to segregated?
Yes,
How old were you when you started driving?
I got my license at the day after my birthday on 14 years old, but I was driving when I was 12 and 13.
Describe the neighborhood you grew up in.
It was just a typical neighborhood that houses, and I stayed with my grandmother a lot. They had about 5 or 6 acres. We were at the edge of town. We had creeks and forest and birds, and we could hunt, ride bicycles on dirt roads. Population.
What was your first job?
My first job was working at Charles Piggly Wiggly Grocery Warehouse. Charles Piggly Wiggly Warehouse in Jacksonville, Texas. I made about 75 cents an hour, and I would load and unload box cars and trailer trucks all day long.
What years were you in the military?
I went into the National Guard in December of 1960, and I went on active duty for 6 months basic training in March of 1961, and I came home from that tour, and then they called up the Texas National Guard in October of 1961, and I stayed there on active duty at Fort Polk, Louisiana, in the regular Army until August of 1962. And then I was released and stayed in the National Guard for 2 more years. And then I went into inactive duty in the Army Reserve for another 3 years, and then I was discharged for all my military obligations. At Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I was up there a little over 2 months, and then they transferred me to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I took my advanced training there for 4 months. And then I was released back to the National Guard of Texas. But then they called up the whole National Guard of Texas in October of 1962, and then I stayed there for over 10 months before they released us back to the Texas National Guard.
What were the requirements to join the Army?
Well, first of all, you had to pass a physical, and then you had to be 18 years old, and you had to pass some written test. And if you did all that, then you were accepted I was accepted into the National Guard, but that's also the same thing you had to get into the regular Army.
Describe the training you had to do in the military.
Well, you ready?
Mm.
My training was, when I joined the National Guard, was I was going to be stationed in an administrative company. But you had to pass all your physical training before you ever got into any kind of job classifications in there. So first of all, you have to go to basic training. You learn all the physical things you have to do in the Army. You learn how to shoot weapons. You learn how to camp, camp out. You learn how to defend yourself. You learn how to read a compass. You learn how to take care of yourself every day. You learn how to take orders. I guess those are the basic things that you do there. And then you go to advanced training to do some type of work. And since I was going to be in an administrative company, I was in, they called it a clerk typist school. That's where you handled all the duties of a company, and you had to keep up with all the paperwork and all the stuff that you have to do for everybody in that company, which is roughly between 200 and 250 men in a company. And you did all kinds of paperwork, filled out all kinds of forms on them, processed all their forms and stuff of that nature. That's what I did when I was in my advanced training. You also do some physical training and stuff while you're in that too. After I got out of the training in the regular army, I went back to my National Guard unit, and in there we did some of those basic same things, but we were responsible mainly for paying all the troops in the National Guard. And that's also what I did when we were called up on active duty at Fort Polk, Louisiana. We paid all the troops their monthly salary and made sure that all their dependents at home got their support checks, their children got their support checks, any kind of travel that people in the service had to do, we had to process their travel vouchers or money. And we also had to do physical training there ourselves and keep up to date on all the requirements that you have in the military service. But that's the big overall function. You have to have all the proper paperwork on all the people in the whole company. And we paid all the people there was about 15,000 of them at Fort Polk that we had to pay once a month. And we had to pay them in cash back in those days. So on payday, we had to go through and count out all the money for each individual unit, and it had to match their pay, and they had to give them the exact amount of money. So you'd have to know how many hundreds, how many 50s, how many 20s, how many ones, how many tens of dollars that you'd have to give so that they'd have the proper currency to pay the men when they went back to their units and paid them.
What were some of your favorite songs, shows, and movies as a child?
Huh?
No.
I don't have any real specific songs, but I used to like all the country western songs back in the 1950s and 60s. And that was in the Elvis Presley area. I was fortunate enough to get to see him back when he was getting started in his career. But I really don't have, quote, a special song. I used to like to watch a lot of the Army movies back in when they were making them in the 50s and 60s. and it would pertain mainly to World War II. The Sands of Iwo Jima was one of them I can remember. But there were a lot of others that I used to like those type movies. TV shows. Of course, I guess my main TV shows were the sports shows, because we didn't really have a TV until I was a senior in high school. So there wasn't many TV. We only had 2 channels to watch. And one of them was Tyler and one of them was Lufkin. And so I didn't really watch a whole lot except maybe football or sporting events that were on sometime.
What were your favorite things to do for fun as a child?
My main things were we would just get out and play sports, nothing really organized. We'd go hunting and fishing all the time down the creeks and stuff that were close to our house. I loved all sports, baseball, football, basketball. We played those things day and night. That's it.
How was your experience watching the first man walk on the moon?
At that point in time, I was married and had 1 child. And I remember sitting in front of my black and white TV and watching them get off of the spaceship and making their remarks about, I can't remember the exact words, but something about one man or something in mankind or something. And I think we were all sitting there, all 3 of us, my wife and Diane and Kim, my daughter, were there watching it.
What was your main job, and describe what you did in it?
My main job? Well, are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
I had my degree in accounting, and I went to work for Dallas Power and Light Company and that's my main job where I spent most of my career. And I was in accounting and financial management positions in that company for all of my 24 and a half years there. And I was a supervisor and manager of various groups of people throughout that period of time. And we were responsible for some of my activity, innovating new online systems. Back in those days, we were on punch cards and various things of that nature, but we were gradually moving to online systems. Most all the invoices and things from some of the power plants that were built, lignite power plants and nuclear power plants, used to come across my desk, and I reviewed a lot of that stuff. We implemented new payroll systems, new employee information systems, construction systems, accounting systems. We paid all the people, all the employees, kept up with all their records. And just managed people.